Ladies and gentlemen, on the 6th and 9th of August 1945, the bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. 120,000 people were killed on the direct impacts, 60,000 at Nagasaki, at Hiroshima, and 60,000 at Nagasaki. They weren't just hit by those atomic bombs, they were vaporized. More people took a long time to die in the pain from the fires that happened, and even more people took time to die from the effects of the aftermath. The destruction was appalling. In many parts of those two towns, the earth was turned into glass. Why did this happen? Because the US command wanted to take revenge for Pearl Harbor, because the Japanese had taken them unaware. On the 12th of August, the Emperor and his ministers finally got what they had been suing for, which was the surrender to the American fleet. The 2nd of September 1945 was designated Victory over Japan Day and celebrated throughout the Western world. I was born on the 31st of December 1946 at 23:20, and for a long time believed that my mother was correct in saying she carried me through Victory in Japan celebrations. Well, if she truly had, I have had the longest recorded human gestation period in the world. I should possibly have been an elephant. I grew up in the UK, and with my grandparents, my parents, walked from Manchester Moss Side through to our aunties on the other side of town, where the destruction from the Blitz existed. It was grey dust, but you could walk through it. There were just 7 little terrace houses, and the aunties lived in the middle. And then way down the way, extraordinarily, was Manchester United's football field, which still stands. The difference between what happened in the German war and the Japanese war is striking. Yes, there was blitzkrieg, there was fire. And it wasn't just Manchester, it was Dresden, it was Stalingrad. Now, do you know about Shinkolobwe? Does it sound like it might be in Africa? Do you think it might sound like an African name? I'll tell you the story of Shinkolobwe, and also of one of the greatest genocides which was committed by King Leopold IV of the Belgians on the people of the Belgian Congo in order to get access to those minerals, including the uranium at Shinkolobwe. He massacred 100 million people. It's something that's not talked about because it's only Africa. Shinkolobwe is currently in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The Central African Republic is the other part of the Congo. And when Belgian Congo got its independence, its first minister was murdered because he wanted to charge the Belgians reparations for what they'd caused. British Lumumba was tortured and killed. What happens when you mine uranium? You release uranium, which immediately starts to change, radium, and radon gas. Radon gas is colorless and odorless. It goes out into the air and it affects people. The dust from the mining gets onto the miners' clothes. In those days, they didn't have protective clothing. And they would go home in their working clothes, and the children would breathe in the dust. This is still happening in many uranium mines worldwide. No protective clothing, no masks to stop them breathing in the gases or the dust. The children would then get asthma. The women breathing it in would then produce deformed babies. It's a big problem. It's a very big problem. The mining of uranium requires water. And the water is polluted by the heavy metals that go into it. For every 100 tons of uranium ore mined, 99 are discarded onto tailings dams. And most of those tailings dams are not marked as dangerous. They are highly radioactive. Then you produce yellow cake. For every 1 kilogram of yellow cake, you have 99 kgs of waste material, also discarded onto the tailings dams. Though sometimes it's actually put in drums. Then you produce the rods for the nuclear reactors. Again, 1%, 99% waste. The DRC has been destroyed by the mining at Srinkalobwe and the other mines. The Navajo in Colorado in the 1950s were forced to go down and mine uranium. The indigenous people of the United States, who also have been wiped out by genocidal actions, are very wise and very ground sensitive. They thought there was something very, very wrong about the mining of uranium. And they were suspicious when the miners became sick, when the communities around the mine became sick. Finally, they discovered that it was what they were mining that was making them sick. They took action against the mining company for remediation, not just of the community, but of the water, the polluted land, and looking at remediating the mines themselves and giving compensation to the people who were dying of cancers dust inhalation, and other diseases. They are the only community in the world to have won. They are only community in the world to have stood fast against allowing more uranium mining to happen again in that area. Colorado is very uranium rich, but they have stopped all mining since round about the mid-1960s, late 1970s. So other places have been looked at. The place most looked at and most exploited has been Namibia, with the Rossing mine, which is the biggest open cast mine in the world. The Rossing mine is notorious because there it isn't a closed mine. The dust blows all over, so it affects communities for many, many kilometers around. In fact, since dust from South Africa's mine dumps has been found in Tasmania, it probably blows right across Namibia and further. The miners have been better treated, but it doesn't stop the problem. When you've got dust flying around all over the place, it gets everywhere. It gets into the miners' lungs still. It gets onto their clothes. They have been encouraged to leave the working clothes at the mine and go home in other clothes. It hasn't stopped them getting the same diseases. What do the mining companies do? And this is what mining companies do throughout Africa. When the miner becomes sick, very sick, and can't work anymore, he's boarded and told to go home without medical aid, without a pension. He's wiped out and left to die. Children at Rossing have been born deformed. Many of the women can no longer have children, and many of their daughters are unable to have children. This is how mining works, particularly in Africa. This is how mining has worked in South Africa, where we have mined uranium with gold for now 135 years. The mining waste belt from Welkom to Nigel has huge deposits of uranium. The three holes that they built they mined into through the dolomite were dewatered, and they left to build up water, which is called acid mine drainage. It has heavy metals in it. When it started to reach surface, it was decanted initially into the Robinson Lake. Robinson Lake has 44,000 times the allowable amount of uranium in it. People in Snake Park in Soweto produced deformed babies. They were so appalled by these children, they ran away and left them with the grandmothers. The grandmothers are now looking for wheelchairs to get those children to the clinic for their medications, because they can't carry them anymore. And the clinic won't go to them. Snake Park is on the top of the hill, so it's quite a struggle to get those kids up and down. The same is happening in Nigel, exactly the same. What is worse? Rivoli, Soweto, all along there, Tudor shaft. We have a situation where people are exposed to fine mine dust, which they breathe in the winter when it blows, and they die of lung diseases caused by their lungs filling up with that dust. It's uriniferous, but they don't have enough time to develop cancer because their lungs shut down long before that. Doctors have asked them, have you been down the mines? No, I've only ever lived here. I've never been down. In 1982, our wonderfully cynical apartheid government, which had been supplying enriched uranium to the US, France and the UK for the weapons program, was affected by sanctions. So, without a thought in the world, it dumped 60,000 tons of enriched uranium on the tailings dams on the mining waste belt, making the impact of uranium on the local populations even greater. It had no problems about doing it. It had no fears, because as far as it was concerned, these people could be written off. Same take as the mining companies have on their employees. Let's look at it. African miners are the worst compensated, bar none in the world. And this goes on and on and on. No action has been taken by the new government to address these problems. No action has been taken by the health department to find out the impact of uranium mining and uranium waste on our communities. No action has been taken to stop the huge amount of water that's being used by the mines and which is depriving communities of drinking water, because the mines do not comply with their environmental management programs, and this is a real problem. Another well-informed and amazing community is that of the Australian Aborigines. And it is from them that the title of the speech, The Silver Snake of Death, derives. Why? Because when they first discovered that the Australian government was to allow uranium mining, and they found out that they would be involved with it, they turned around and said, release uranium and you generate the end of the world. We've seen Chernobyl. We've seen Windscale. We've seen Fukushima. Nobody has been able to solve the problems of containing those nuclear disasters. Ladies and gentlemen, can you really and truly want nuclear power on your doorstep? I leave you with that question. Probably have to edit this.
What are you trying to do?
Probably going to have to edit the end of it.